The ship New Soul moved through space like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Inside, Ambassador Park So-young stood at the window of her quarters, watching stars drift past. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. 3 years learning alien languages, studying their customs, and practicing how to bow properly to beings that had no concept of bowing. Captain Lee Tae-min walked into the room without knocking. So-young smiled. She had told him 100 times that he could enter whenever he wanted. They had known each other since military academy, back when she was training to be a pilot and he was learning to command ships. "We'll reach Velkari space in 6 hours," Taemin said. He looked tired. The journey had taken 2 months, and commanding a diplomatic vessel was different from running a warship. Everything had to be perfect. Every detail mattered when you were trying to make peace. "Are you nervous?" So-young asked. Taemin shrugged. "I'm always nervous when I don't understand the other side. The Velkari have been around for 1,000 years. We've been in space for less than 50. They could crush us without trying." So-young turned from the window. "That's exactly why we need this treaty. Earth needs allies, not enemies." Dr. Kim Hyun-woo entered the room carrying a tablet. His face showed excitement mixed with worry. As the ship's chief scientist, he had studied every piece of information about the Velkari that Earth possessed. It wasn't much. "I've been reading. Their latest messages," Hyun-woo said. "They're using formal greeting protocols. That's good. It means they're taking this seriously." Major Choi Jin-ae appeared in the doorway. She never entered a room without checking the corners first. As head of security, she trusted nothing and no one completely. Even on a peaceful mission, she carried her weapon and kept her guards alert. "The Velkari escort ships just appeared on our sensors," Jin-ae reported. 6 vessels. They're big." Taemin nodded. "Expected. They want to show us their strength. Or they want to make sure we don't try anything stupid," Jin-ae added. So-young looked at her 3 companions. These people had volunteered to come with her into unknown space, to meet aliens who might decide to kill them all on a whim. Earth's government had chosen them because they were the best at what they did. But more than that, they were her friends. "Remember," So-young said, "we're not just representing Earth. We're representing the idea that humans can change, that we're not the violent savages they think we are." The Velkari had made their opinion of humanity very clear. Humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted with access to the greater galaxy. They controlled the hyperspace routes that Earth needed to expand beyond their current cluster of systems. Without Velkari permission, humanity would remain trapped in a small corner of space forever. 6 hours later, the New Soul dropped out of hyperspace near the Velkari homeworld. So-young gasped when she saw it. The planet was covered in massive, crystal structures that reached up through the atmosphere. Ships moved between the crystals like insects around flowers. The sight was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Incoming message," the communications officer announced. The main screen filled with the image of a Velkari. Overlord Thekval looked like a cross between a snake and a tree. His skin was bark-like, with flowing patterns that shifted colors as he moved. His eyes were large and completely black. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind through leaves. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Thekval said. "We greet you in the name of the Velkari Empire. Ambassador Park So-young, you may approach our world. Your escort will guide you to the designated meeting place." So-young stepped forward. "Thank you, Overlord." "Thekval, I come in peace, hoping to build understanding between our peoples." "Understanding is what we seek as well." the Valkyrie replied. Come, let us learn about each other. The screen went dark. Taemin looked at So Young with concern. Something feels wrong about this, he said quietly. You always think something feels wrong, So Young replied. That's why you're good at your job. But sometimes people really do want peace. The new soul followed the Valkyrie escort ships toward the planet. So Young watched the crystal cities grow larger through the viewports. She thought about her briefing materials, about all the things that could go wrong, about all the ways this mission could fail. But she also thought about the possibility of success. If she could convince the Valkyrie to trust humanity, Earth would have access to half the galaxy. Major Jin Ai approached her. Ambassador, I want to increase security protocols. No, So Young said firmly. We go in showing trust. If we act like we expect trouble, we'll get trouble. And if we don't prepare for trouble, we might not survive it, Jin-A replied. Dr. Hyunwoo looked up from his readings. The Valkyrie cities are incredible. Their technology is at least 200 years ahead of ours. But their ships... He paused. Their ships have biological components, living metal. I've never seen anything like it. Is that good or bad? Taemin asked. I don't know, Hyunwoo admitted. The escort ships led them to a space station orbiting the planet. It looked like a massive tree growing in space, with branches that stretched out in all directions. Docking bays opened like flowers, and the new soul was guided into one of them. So Young gathered her things. She would be staying on the station for 3 days while the negotiations took place. The rest of the crew would remain on the ship, ready to leave at a moment's notice if things went badly. Remember, Taemin said as So Young prepared to leave, if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you signal us, and we'll come get you. Nothing will go wrong, So Young replied. The Valkyrie are a civilized people. They've been part of the galactic community for centuries. They understand diplomacy. She hugged each of her friends, then walked toward the airlock. Beyond it waited aliens who had never met a human face to face. She would be the first. Everything Earth hoped for depended on the next 3 days. As the airlock sealed behind her, So Young whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. Then she stepped forward to meet the future. 72 hours had passed without a word from Ambassador Park So Young. Captain Lee Tae-min stood on the bridge of the New Soul, staring at the communications panel that remained silent. His crew moved around him with nervous energy. Everyone knew something was wrong. Still nothing, sir, the communications officer reported for the 20th time that hour. Taemin's hands clenched into fists. So Young had promised to send a message every 12 hours. She had never broken a promise in her life. The Valkyrie station hung in space before them like a giant dead tree, showing no signs of life or activity. Back on Earth, Admiral Kang Moon-sik paced in his office. The old man had trained both Taemin and So Young when they were young officers. He had recommended So Young for this mission because she was brilliant, brave, and believed in the power of peaceful solutions. Now he wondered if he had sent his best student to her death. Sir, his aide announced, President Nam has authorized Operation Silent Approach. Kang nodded grimly. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this. Silent approach meant sending a stealth ship to investigate without being detected. If the Valkyrie had hurt So Young, Earth needed to know the truth before deciding how to respond. Commander Shin Woo-jin received the orders aboard his ship Incheon. The vessel was invisible to most sensors, built for reconnaissance and rescue missions. His crew of 20 specialists had trained for situations exactly like this one. They moved through space like a ghost, approaching the Valkyrie system from an angle that would hide them behind the system's largest moon. "Target acquired," his pilot announced. "The new Soul is drifting. No engine activity, no communications, no signs of life." Wu Jin felt his stomach drop. He had served with Tae Min during the colony wars. The man was too careful to let his ship drift without good reason. "Prepare boarding teams. Full protective gear. We don't know what we're walking into." Dr. Yang Yunji checked her equipment one final time before the boarding operation began. As the team's forensic specialist, she would be responsible for determining what had happened to the crew. She hoped they were alive. She prepared for the possibility that they were not. The boarding team used magnetic clamps to attach their small ship to the new Soul's hull. They cut through the airlock rather than risk using the normal entry procedures. Inside, emergency. Lighting cast red shadows on the walls. The air was cold and still. "Life support is functioning," reported the team medic. "Atmosphere is breathable." They moved through the ship room by room. In the crew quarters, they found the first bodies. 12 crew members lay in their bunks as if they had simply gone to sleep, but their faces showed expressions of pain and terror. Their eyes were open, staring at nothing. "No external wounds," Yang Yunji observed, scanning the bodies with her medical equipment. "No signs of violence or struggle, but something killed them while they were conscious." They found Captain Taemin on the bridge, still sitting in his command chair. His hands gripped the armrests so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. His face was frozen in an expression of pure rage, as if he had seen something that filled him with fury in his final moments. "Neural weapon," Yang Yunji concluded after examining him. "Something that attacks the brain directly. They felt everything but couldn't move or fight back." Commander Wu Jin activated the ship's computer systems. The logs showed that Ambassador So Young had been on the Valkyrie station for 2 full days. Her last message had been positive, reporting good progress in the negotiations. Then, 6 hours later, the crew had begun dying one by one. "Sir," called one of the boarding team members from the diplomatic quarters, "you need to see this." They gathered around a small table where an ornate box sat waiting. The box was made of some kind of living wood that pulsed with soft light. Valkyrie symbols covered its surface, carved deep into the organic material. Yang Yunji opened the box carefully. Inside, suspended in a clear blue fluid, were human organs: a heart, lungs, a liver, kidneys. Each organ was perfectly preserved, as if it had just been removed from a living body. Small tags attached to each organ bore Valkyrie writing. "Can you read this?" Wu Jin asked. Yang Yunji activated her translation device. The words appeared on her screen, and she felt sick as she read them aloud. Heart. Shows rapid increase in rate when subject experiences fear. Lungs. Demonstrate efficient oxygen processing under stress. Liver. Processes toxins at remarkable rate. Kidneys. Continue function even during extreme trauma. "Trauma?" Wu Jin repeated. Yang Yunji's hands shook as she continued reading. "These are medical notes, research observations. They studied her while she was alive." A holographic projector activated automatically when the box was fully opened. The image of Overlord Thekval appeared above the organs, his bark-like skin shifting colors as he spoke. "Humans of Earth," the recording began, "we have completed our examination of your representative. The specimen showed interesting biological responses to various stimuli. Your species demonstrates unusual pain tolerance and will to survive. However, we have concluded that humans are too primitive and aggressive for membership in our confederation. The hologram paused, and Thekval's black eyes seemed to look directly at the boarding team. Consider this scientific exchange a gift. We have learned much about human physiology. You may collect your ship and return to your small corner of space. Do not approach Velkari territory again. The recording ended, leaving the team standing in horrified silence. Yang Yunji forced herself to continue her investigation. Hidden files in the box's memory core revealed the full scope of what had been done to Ambassador So Young. She had been taken to a laboratory immediately after arriving at the station. The Velkari had never intended to negotiate. They had wanted to study a living human. The files contained detailed recordings of the experiments. So Young had been conscious throughout the entire process, kept alive by Velkari medical technology while they systematically removed and examined her organs. Her brain activity had been monitored and recorded as she experienced levels of pain that would have killed most beings. How long? Wu Jin asked quietly. Yang Yunji checked the timestamps. 18 hours. They kept her alive and aware for 18 hours. The boarding team worked in grim silence to gather evidence. They found more files showing that the Velkari had been conducting similar experiments for decades. Hundreds of species had sent diplomatic representatives to the Velkari Empire. None had ever returned home alive. The Galactic Confederation, Yang Yunji said, reading through communication logs. They know. They've known for years what the Velkari do to diplomats. They classify it as cultural differences and tell species to accept the loss for the greater good. Commander Wu Jin sealed the evidence containers and prepared to return to his ship. The new soul would be towed back to Earth space as a tomb and testament to Velkari brutality. Ambassador Park So-young had gone to them with open hands and an open heart, believing in the possibility of peace. They had returned her in pieces, tagged and labeled like a laboratory specimen. As the Incheon departed Velkari space, Wu Jin sent a coded message to Admiral Kang Moon-sik. 3 words that would change everything. Diplomacy has failed. Back on Earth, Kang read the message and closed his eyes. He had known So-young since she was 18 years old. He had watched her grow, from an eager young officer into Earth's finest diplomat. She had believed that any conflict could be resolved through understanding and compromise. Now he would have to tell her parents that their daughter had died in agony, sacrificed to alien curiosity. He would have to explain to Earth's government that the peaceful solution they had hoped for was impossible. The Velkari had made a mistake. They had assumed that humans would accept this horror the way other species had. They had forgotten to ask what humans did when their diplomats were murdered and their trust was betrayed. They were about to find out. The emergency session of Earth's High Council met in complete silence. President Nam Jae-hyuk sat at the head of the table, staring at the evidence files that Commander Shin Woo-jin had brought back from Velkari space. Around the table, Earth's most powerful leaders struggled to process what they were seeing. General Hong Yu-ri was the first to speak. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook with barely controlled rage. 18 hours. They tortured our ambassador for 18 hours, while she was fully conscious. The medical files are clear, added Dr. Yang Yunji, who had been brought to Earth to present her findings. Every procedure was designed to cause maximum pain while keeping the subject alive. This wasn't research. This was sadism. President, Nam looked around the table. These people had been chosen to lead humanity because they were calm, rational, and committed to peaceful solutions. Now, he watched them transform into something else entirely. Professor Lee Min-ho, Earth's chief historian and strategic advisor, cleared his throat. I've been studying similar cases throughout galactic history. The Velkari have done this to representatives from 47 different species over the past 60 years. And the Galactic Confederation knew? Asked Admiral Kang Moon-sik. They knew, Min-ho confirmed. The files show clear evidence that Confederation leaders received reports about these incidents. They classified them as cultural misunderstandings and advised affected species to move forward for the greater good. Move forward, General Hong repeated slowly. They wanted us to accept the torture and murder of our people as a cultural misunderstanding. President Nam activated the room's communication system. Within minutes, the screen filled with images of Earth's colony leaders, military commanders, and government officials from across human space. All of them had seen the evidence. All of them wore the same expression of cold fury. I've called this emergency session, Nam began, to discuss our response to the murder of Ambassador Park So-young and the crew of the New Soul. Response? Interrupted Colonel Bae Dong-hyun from Mars Colony. The only response is war. They butchered our people like laboratory animals. War against the Velkari Empire means war against the most powerful military force in this sector, warned General Hong. They have 1,000 ships to our 200. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Technology didn't help them understand human nature, said Captain Oh Se-jin from the lunar shipyards. They think we'll submit like the other species did. They're wrong. Admiral Kang activated a holographic display showing the current strategic situation. The Velkari control the hyperspace routes we need for expansion. If we fight them and lose, humanity will be trapped in this system cluster forever. If we win, he paused. If we win, we'll have to rebuild the entire galactic order. The galactic order that allowed this to happen? Asked Professor Min-ho. Maybe it needs rebuilding. President Nam stood up. The room fell silent as he walked to the window overlooking Earth's capital city. Below, millions of people went about their daily lives, unaware that their government was deciding whether to commit their species to a war that could destroy them. I've been thinking about Ambassador Park So-young, Nam said quietly. She believed that any conflict could be resolved through understanding. She volunteered for this mission because she wanted to prove that humans had evolved beyond our violent past. He turned back to face the council. The Velkari took that beautiful belief and used it to torture her to death. They recorded her screams for their research files. They labeled her organs like specimens in a museum. The room was absolutely silent. 47 species have lost representatives to Velkari experiments, Nam continued. 47 species accepted the loss and moved on. The Galactic Confederation told them it was the price of peace and stability. General Hong leaned forward. Mr. President, what are you saying? I'm saying that Ambassador Park So-young died believing in peace, but she also died because evil beings thought humans would accept any horror to avoid conflict. They were wrong about us. President Nam returned to his seat and looked directly into the camera that would broadcast his words to every human settlement in known space. The Velkari Empire has declared war on humanity, he announced. They may not realize it yet, but that's what they did when they murdered our ambassador. They tested us to see if we would submit to their authority. They wanted to know if humans would accept injustice for the sake of peace. He paused, letting his words sink in across human space. Today, they get their answer. Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Confederation. We reject their system of appeasement and submission. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Velkhari Empire and any force that supports them. The reaction was immediate. Across human space, colonies activated their military reserves. Shipyards that had been building peaceful exploration vessels converted to warship production. Universities redirected their research toward military applications. But it wasn't just military preparation. Something deeper was happening to human society. The torture of Ambassador Park So-young had awakened something primal in the human spirit. Not just anger, but a determination to ensure that such evil would never be tolerated again. Dr. Ryu Sang-wook, Earth's most brilliant weapons designer, had been working in secret since the news broke. He appeared on the Council's screen from his laboratory on Europa. "Mr. President," he said, "I've been analyzing the Velkhari technology samples that Commander Shin brought back. Their ships use biological components, living metal that responds to neural commands. I think I can turn that against them." "Explain," General Hong demanded. "If their ships are alive, they can be killed," Ryu replied. "Not just destroyed, actually killed. I'm developing weapons that will turn their greatest advantage into their greatest weakness." Captain Oh Se-jin spoke up from Luna. "The shipyards are ready to begin production of a new class of warship. We're calling them ghost ships. They'll be invisible to conventional sensors and armed with the new bio-neural weapons." "How long before we're ready?" President Nam asked. 6 months for the first wave," Oh replied. "But sir, we're not just building ships. We're building a new kind of military. The Velkhari think they understand warfare because they've fought conventional enemies for 1,000 years. They've never fought humans." Professor Minho pulled up historical files on his tablet. "I've been studying human military history. We don't fight like other species. We adapt constantly. We use our enemies' strengths against them. We turn every rule of warfare into a suggestion." "What do you mean?" Admiral Kang asked. "Other species have honor codes in warfare," Minho explained. "Rules about acceptable targets, proper tactics, civilized behavior. Humans follow those rules when fighting honorable enemies. But when someone tortures our diplomats to death," he smiled grimly, "we throw out the rule book." General Hong activated her own display, showing troop deployments across human space. "I'm organizing something new. Not just an army, but liberation forces. We're not just fighting to defeat the Velkhari. We're fighting to free every species they've tortured and enslaved." President Nam nodded approvingly. "Make sure every species in the galaxy knows what we're fighting for. Not conquest, not territory, justice." The meeting continued for 8 hours as Earth's leaders planned humanity's first galactic war. But as the sun set over the capital, President Nam found himself thinking about Park So-young again. She had died believing in the power of peaceful solutions. Her death would not be in vain, but it would be avenged. The Velkhari had made a simple mistake. They had assumed that humans were just another species that would accept injustice to avoid conflict. They had forgotten that humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other, learning every possible way to wage war. Now they would learn what happened when those skills were turned against alien monsters who tortured innocents for pleasure. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and it would start with the complete destruction of the Velkhari Empire. 6 months after Earth declared war on the Velkhari Empire, Captain Oh Se-jin stood on the bridge of humanity's first ghost ship, the Busan. The vessel looked nothing like traditional warships. Its hull was black as space itself, covered with adaptive panels that could mimic any background. Inside, the ship hummed with experimental technology that would have been impossible without captured Velkari equipment. Dr. Ryu Sang-wook walked onto the bridge carrying a small device that looked like a metal flower. This was Project Vengeance, humanity's secret weapon designed specifically to destroy Velkari bioships. Final test results are perfect, Ryu announced with satisfaction. The neural virus uploads directly into their living metal. Once it's inside their ship systems, it turns their own technology against them. Oh examined the device carefully. How does it work exactly? Velkari ships are partially alive, Ryu explained. They respond to thoughts and emotions from their crews. Our virus makes the ship think it's being attacked from the inside. The living metal tries to protect itself by crushing anything organic it finds, including the crew. Oh nodded grimly. It was a horrible way to die. But then again, the Velkari had shown exactly how horrible they could be to Ambassador Park So-young. Lieutenant Colonel Park Jun-seo appeared on the bridge's communications screen from his special operations base on Mars. Behind him, soldiers practiced with equipment that looked more like alien artifacts than human weapons. Sir, Jun-seo reported, infiltration teams are ready. We've identified 17 Velkari research facilities across their territory. Each one contains prisoners from dozens of species. What's the plan? Oh asked. We go in fast and quiet, Jun-seo replied. Free the prisoners, gather intelligence, and plant Dr. Ryu's neural viruses in their computer systems. By the time they realize we've been there, their entire research network will be infected. Oh turned to his weapons officer. Are we ready to test the bio-neural weapons in combat? Yes, sir, the officer replied. We've loaded 12 virus torpedoes. Each one can infect an entire Velkari battle group. Engineer Kim Da-eun worked frantically in the ship's computer core, making final adjustments to humanity's newest creation, adaptive combat artificial intelligence. Unlike normal AI, this system learned and evolved during battle, creating new tactics faster than organic minds could process. Captain, Da-eun called out, I'm detecting Velkari patrol ships entering our sensor range. 3 vessels, standard configuration. Perfect, Oh said. Time to see if our new toys work. The Velkari patrol ships moved through space in a formal pattern, following routes they had used for hundreds of years. Their crews felt confident and secure. No species had ever successfully challenged Velkari military power. The humans would learn the same lesson that 47 other species had learned before them. Commander Velkarath sat in his biochair, feeling his ship's living systems respond to his thoughts. The vessel was an extension of his own body, armed with weapons that could destroy entire planets. He had heard reports about human ships in this sector, but he wasn't concerned. Humans were primitives playing with technology they didn't understand. Sir, his sensor operator reported, I'm detecting some kind of energy disturbance ahead. Before Velkarath could respond, space around his ship exploded with light and sound. The Busan appeared out of nowhere, firing weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. The shots didn't just hit the Velkari ship, they burrowed into its living hull like parasites. What is happening? Velkarath screamed as his ship began to convulse. The neural virus spread through the vessel's biosystems like wildfire. The living metal that formed the ship's structure suddenly identified the crew as threats to be eliminated. Walls began closing in on themselves. Floors turned liquid. Ceilings dropped toward the deck. Velkarath tried to escape his biochair, but the chair had become part of the virus's attack. Organic tentacles wrapped around his limbs while the ship's consciousness, now convinced it was under attack, began to crush him slowly. The entire battle lasted less than 3 minutes. 3 Velkari ships, each capable of destroying a human city, were reduced to floating tombs filled with their own crew's remains. Captain O watched the results with professional satisfaction. "Send the data to Admiral Kang. Tell him the weapons work perfectly." Across Velkari space, similar attacks were taking place. Human ghost ships appeared without warning, struck with impossible weapons, and vanished before their enemies could respond. But this wasn't random violence. Every attack followed a careful plan designed to maximize psychological impact. Lieutenant Colonel Park Jun-seo led his teams into Velkari Research Facility Delta 7, moving through corridors that pulsed with organic light. The facility looked more like the inside of a living creature than a building. Walls breathed. Floors felt warm and soft underfoot. The entire structure was alive. "Remember," Jun-seo whispered to his team, "we're here to rescue prisoners and gather intelligence. Kill only when necessary." They found the first laboratory behind a door that opened like an iris. Inside, beings from a dozen different species hung suspended in biotanks, kept alive for experimental purposes. Some had been there for years. Others were fresh subjects, recently captured from diplomatic missions. "Dear God," whispered Sergeant Kim Min-soo as he examined the prisoners. "How many species have they been doing this to?" "All of them," replied Dr. Lee Ha-jin, the team's medical specialist. "Every species that ever tried to negotiate with the Velkari. This is their idea of diplomacy." The rescue operation took 4 hours. Jun-seo's teams freed over 300 prisoners from dozens of species. Many were too damaged by years of experimentation to survive, but others were strong enough to be moved to human medical facilities. Before leaving, the teams planted Dr. Ryu's neural viruses throughout the facility's computer systems. The virus would spread through the Velkari data network, gathering intelligence and sabotaging research projects across their empire. But the most important discovery came from the facility's main computer core. Dr. Lee Ha-jin downloaded thousands of files, showing the true scope of Velkari activities. They weren't just experimenting on diplomatic representatives. They were systematically studying every species in the galaxy, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. "Captain," Lee reported to Jun-seo, "you need to see this. They've been planning something called the Great Harvest. It's a plan to capture and study millions of beings from every known species." Jun-seo examined the files with growing horror. The Velkari hadn't just been conducting random experiments. They had been preparing for the systematic enslavement of the entire galaxy. Back on Earth, Admiral Kang Moon-sik reviewed reports from the first wave of attacks. Human forces had struck at 17 different targets simultaneously. Every mission had succeeded completely. Not a single human soldier had been lost. "How is this possible?" General Hong Yuri asked as she studied the battle reports. "Our weapons are working better than we hoped. Our ships are faster than anything the Velkari have. Our soldiers are outperforming enemies with centuries more experience." Professor Lee, Minho smiled from his position at the intelligence desk. "Because we're not fighting the way they expect us to fight. Every other species that challenged the Velkari used conventional tactics, honorable warfare, direct confrontation." "And humans?" Hong asked. "Humans learned warfare by fighting each other for thousands of years," Minho replied. We know how to be ruthless when ruthlessness is justified. We know how to adapt when adaptation is necessary. And we know how to turn our enemies' advantages into their weaknesses. Dr. Ryu Sang-wook appeared on the communication screen from his laboratory. Admiral, the neural virus is working better than expected. We're not just destroying their ships, we're taking control of their entire computer network. Every piece of intelligence they've gathered over the past century is now available to us. Admiral Kang leaned back in his chair. The war was going so well that he was starting to worry. Wars weren't supposed to be this easy, especially against enemies with superior technology and numbers. "What aren't we seeing?" he asked the room. "What's the trap we're walking into?" Engineer Kim Da-yoon's voice came from the laboratory level below. "Sir, I think I know. The Velkari aren't fighting back because they don't understand what's happening to them. They've never encountered an enemy that fights this way. But when they figure out our tactics, they'll adapt," Hong finished. "They'll change their strategy." "Let them adapt," Admiral Kang said firmly. "That's when we'll show them what humans do best. We don't just use one strategy. We use every strategy. When they adapt to our ghost tactics, we'll switch to direct assault. When they adapt to that, we'll try something completely different." The room fell silent as Earth's military leaders contemplated the scope of what they were attempting. They weren't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the rules of galactic warfare. The Velkari had made their first mistake when they tortured Ambassador Park So-young. Their second mistake was assuming that humans would fight like every other species they had encountered. They were about to learn that humans had been preparing for this war for their entire evolutionary history. 2 years after the war began, Admiral Lim Kyung-soo stood on the command deck of the battleship Seoul as it approached the former Velkari homeworld. The planet's crystal cities still reached toward the stars, but they were dark now. Silent. The Velkari Empire had fallen not with a final battle, but with a slow collapse as their biotechnology turned against them. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving surrender signals from the remaining Velkari facilities." Lim nodded. The war had ended 3 months ago when the last Velkari fleet abandoned their territory and fled to unknown space. What remained was cleanup and reconstruction. More importantly, it was time to build something better than what had existed before. On Earth, Ambassador Yoon Hye-jin prepared for the most important diplomatic mission in human history. She had been chosen to replace Park So-young as Earth's chief representative, but her job was different. Where So-young had sought peace through compromise, Hye-jin's mission was to establish peace through strength. The Great Assembly was meeting on the neutral world of Centris Prime. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered to discuss the new galactic order. The old Galactic Confederation had collapsed when humanity revealed the truth about Velkari experiments and the Confederation's role in covering them up. Hye-jin walked into the assembly hall knowing that every being there was afraid of humans. In 2 years, humanity had completely destroyed the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They had done it using tactics that other species couldn't understand or counter. Now everyone wanted to know what humans planned to do with their victory. "Honored representatives," Hye-jin began, standing at the center of the circular hall. "I come before you as a representative of humanity, but I also come as a voice for every being who suffered under Velkari experiments." The hall was absolutely silent. Many of the species present had lost diplomatic representatives to Velkari torture chambers. For decades, they had been told to accept these losses for the greater good. 2 years ago, the Velkari Empire murdered our ambassador, Park So-young. Hyajin continued. They tortured her for 18 hours while recording her pain for their research files. They returned her body to us in pieces, labeled like specimens in a laboratory. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. They had read the evidence files that humans had distributed throughout the galaxy. The old Galactic Confederation told us to accept this murder as a cultural misunderstanding, Hyejin said, her voice growing stronger. They advised us to move forward for the greater good. They expected us to submit to injustice in the name of peace. She paused, looking around the room at faces representing hundreds of different species. Today I announce the formation of the Liberation Alliance. This new organization operates on a simple principle. Any species that commits atrocities against sentient beings will face immediate and overwhelming response. Confederation Arbiter Veltar, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, stood up from his designated section. Ambassador Hyejin, humanity's military response was excessive. The complete destruction of the Velkari Empire has created instability throughout this sector. Hyejin turned to face him directly. Arbiter Veltar, your Confederation received detailed reports about Velkari experiments for 60 years. You classified the systematic torture and murder of diplomatic representatives as cultural differences. You are the last being in this galaxy who should lecture anyone about proportional response. The hall erupted in whispers and heated discussions. Many species had suspected Confederation leaders knew about the experiments, but Hyejin's statement was the first official confirmation. The Liberation Alliance will include any species that commits to protecting sentient rights, Hyejin continued. We will share technology, coordinate defenses, and ensure that what happened to Ambassador Park So-young never happens again. Dr. Kim Hyun-woo, who had survived the attack on the New Soul and was now humanity's chief scientific advisor, activated a holographic display showing former Velkari space. The territory had been transformed into a series of protected zones, where rescued species could rebuild their civilizations. We have freed over 50,000 beings from Velkari research facilities, Hyun-woo reported. Many of these individuals represent entire species that were thought to be extinct. The Velkari had been keeping them alive for study. Hyejin gestured toward a section of the hall where representatives of these rescued species sat together. These beings are living proof of what happens when evil is tolerated in the name of stability. Their suffering was the price of your peace. Captain Oh Se-jin appeared on the main display from his position aboard the Busan. Behind him, construction. Ships worked to build something unprecedented in galactic history. Ambassador, Oh reported, construction of the Park So-young Memorial Station is ahead of schedule. The station is being built from the remains of the Velkari capital ship, using their own biotechnology to create a living monument. Hyejin smiled. The memorial station would serve as both a tribute to their fallen ambassador and a reminder of what humans did to those who murdered their people. Admiral Lim Kyung-soo's voice came through from the former Velkari homeworld. All research. Facilities have been secured. We've recovered complete records of every experiment conducted over the past century. The evidence will be preserved for historical record. But the most important voice came from engineer Kim Da-yoon, speaking from the Liberation Alliance's new headquarters on Luna. Ambassador, the defensive network is online. Any species that joins the Alliance will be protected by human technology and military support. Hyejin looked around the assembly hall. Representatives from dozens of species were already showing interest in joining the Alliance. The promise of protection from another Velkari-type threat was appealing to beings who had lived in fear for decades. "The choice is simple," Hyojin announced. "Join the Liberation Alliance and help us build a galaxy where justice matters, or continue supporting systems that allow atrocities to happen in the name of political convenience." Arbiter Veltar tried one more time to reassert Confederation authority. "Ambassador, humanity cannot simply impose its will on the entire galaxy. There are established procedures, diplomatic protocols, the same protocols that classified Ambassador." "Park So-young's torture as a cultural misunderstanding?" Hyojin interrupted. "The same procedures that told 47 species to accept the murder of their representatives? Those protocols are dead, Arbiter. We killed them when we destroyed the Velkari Empire." The hall fell silent again as representatives considered their options. The old Confederation offered stability and established procedures. The new alliance offered protection and justice, backed by the most effective military force in galactic history. One by one, species began declaring their intention to join the Liberation Alliance. The vote wasn't even close. By the end of the session, over 90% of the galaxy's civilized species had chosen to abandon the Confederation in favor of humanity's new order. 6 months later, Ambassador Yoon Hyojin stood before the completed Park So-young Memorial Station. The structure was a work of art and engineering that combined human technology with repurposed Velkari biosystems. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a living reminder of both loss and vengeance. The memorial contained not just So-young's restored remains, but archives of every being the Velkari had tortured over the centuries. Their names, their stories, their suffering, all of it preserved so that future generations would remember the cost of tolerating evil. Ambassador Park So-young believed in the power of peaceful solutions, Hyojin said, addressing representatives from across the galaxy who had come for the memorial's dedication. She volunteered for a dangerous mission because she wanted to prove that humans could resolve conflicts through understanding and compromise. The crowd listened in respectful silence as Hyojin's words echoed through the station's bioacoustic systems. The Velkari took that beautiful belief and used it to torture her to death. They thought her pain would teach us submission. Instead, it taught the galaxy that some evils cannot be tolerated, no matter the cost of stopping them. Behind Hyojin, the memorial's central display showed images of So-young during her life. As a young officer, as a diplomat, as a woman who believed that any problem could be solved if people just talked to each other honestly. Today, the Liberation Alliance protects over 300 species across 2 galaxy arms, Hyojin continued. We have prevented 17 potential conflicts through mediation and deterrence. We have freed thousands of beings from slavery and persecution. We have built a galaxy where justice matters more than political convenience. She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. Many of them had initially feared humanity's rise to power. Now they understood that humans fought not for conquest, but for principles. Ambassador Park So-young went to the Velkari with an open hand and an open heart, Hyojin concluded. They returned her to us in pieces, believing this would make us submit. Instead, they taught us that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be willing to fight for it. The memorial service ended with a moment of silence for all the beings who had died in Velkari laboratories.